This video has been made under fair use. All images and clips used belong to the copyright holders. Support the artists who create these wonderful things and physical media too. We'll miss them when they're gone. Okay, let's go! Hello, Happy New Year and all the best for 2026. Well, here we are, the end of the first week back in January. The decorations are down, the lights are out, and we're entering the misery period of darkness, gloom, rain and ice until spring arrives to rescue us from it. So, this video was made with the intention of being uploaded before Christmas. I certainly filmed it beforehand. Unfortunately, work, illness, shopping, family, domestic stuff and general Christmassy things took priority, and old Father Time just beat me again. So, you can take this video in two ways. I'm either ridiculously late for a Christmas video, or obscenely early. It's your choice. Anyway, why not grab what's left of the Christmas chocolates, throw a festive blanket over you, and enjoy what should have been a Christmas review video. Oh, and stay tuned to the end for a little bonus. Enjoy! Hello! Welcome back and season's greetings. Christmas is fast approaching, and I thought it would be nice to revisit a lovely old Christmas tradition, the annual. Back in the 80s and 90s, the Christmas annual was a staple under the tree. Whatever your interest was, from Spider-Man to Neighbours, there was an annual for you, and I was no exception. In this video, we're travelling back 40 years to one of my favourite brands by looking through the 1985 Transformers annual, when the original Generation 1 line was at its peak. So, let's revisit Christmas past and take a look at the book that brought the festive spirit and kept me quiet over the Christmas holiday. One of my Christmas traditions begins with an annual. My countdown to Christmas starts when I buy the yearly Viz annual. Traditionally, a collection of comic strips, letters and features compiled from 10 issues. This has been something I've done for years, starting when my friend Chris bought me my first copy of The Sausage Sandwich back in 1991. However, I'm not talking about Viz in this video. I will save that for another video later on down the line. These days, with the rise in technology and gaming, I don't know if the concept of the annual is considered a bit archaic. I know they still produce them. My kids got the Roblox and Adopt Me annuals last year. We certainly read through them together. However, it's all about YouTube, Roblox games and TikTok videos in this day and age. Do kids still have favourite shows and characters which they'd want annuals of these days? Or are they really just a thing of the past? Anyway, I doubt my audience is kids. If you're watching this, it's probably because you remember the joy of a Christmas annual. Although, if you are a kid, thank you for your time and interest in the ramblings of a middle-aged man. So, without further ado, let's check the annual out. I've mentioned before that the two biggest influences on my life were Doctor Who and the Transformers. So, it will come as no surprise that the annuals that carried those brands would find their way under my tree back in the 80s. So, Transformers launched in September of 1984, and I was hooked immediately. If my memory serves me correctly, I received Starscream for Christmas that year. And I believe this book was released in December 1985. So, the franchise was in full swing, and Series 2 of the animated series and toys had been launched. Now, this is my original that I've had since I was a kid, and it's still in great condition considering it's around 40 years old now. There's a slight tear on the top side as you can see, but that's about it. So, the cover sports the original Transformers logo and features Optimus Prime, Jazz and Sunstreaker representing the Autobots, with both Starscream and Thundercracker in jet mode representing the Decepticons. And the character designs are based on the toys rather than the animated series, which is a theme that runs through the entire annual, and I shall mention again where appropriate. Inside, we have a black and white image of Optimus Prime in both robot and truck mode, presumably to colour in. On the next page, we have the brand logo, Autobot and Decepticon symbols, and a line to show ownership of the book. As you can see, my mum's filled that in for me. I absolutely loved these next two pages. They featured the box art from the Transformers toys, and this was one of the reasons they were so successful. The artist renderings of the characters/toys were gorgeous and really gave them personality. This presents 7 Decepticons, missing out Frenzy and Thundercracker. Otherwise, the original 84 line of villains is all here. Oddly, despite Series 2 of the toy line having been released, and characters being featured in the annual, none of the 85 lines are featured on this page, or the next. Turning the page over is an overview of the cast of Autobots. This time, instead of using the toy box art, they went with a page from the Marvel comic strip. Most likely as there were more Autobots than Decepticons, and not enough space to feature everyone individually. There's 18 characters there over those 2 pages, and all of them from the original 1984 toy releases. There's not a single character from the 1985 toy releases, otherwise that probably would have been another 2 pages, and there's only so much space in the annual. Next up, we have a comic strip called Plague of the Insecticons, in which the Autobots, meeting with President Ronald Reagan, are attacked by the Insecticons. These characters had featured in the animated TV show back in 1984, but the toys hadn't been released until early of 1985, so they had been released by the time this annual came out. They frame the Autobots by claiming the attack takes place in the name of Optimus Prime. In reality, Soundwave intercepted a White House call that was unscrambled and reported to Megatron, who vowed to disrupt the peace talks. The Insecticons' plan succeeds, and the soldiers chase out the Autobots after Bombshell declares that they'll attack the city under instructions from Prime. Issuing the order to split up, Warpath and Prowl travel to the city to battle the Insecticons, while Prime, suspecting they're being controlled from a source nearby, goes to investigate. In order to aid his fellow Autobots in battle, Optimus Prime releases Roller, one of his 3 components. Roller joins Prowl and Warpath, whilst Prime himself discovers the Decepticon spy cassette Ravage is controlling the Insecticons' battle movements. At the last moment, when Bombshell is sneaking up on Prime to take over his mind with a Cerebro shell, Roller is attacked and damaged, causing Prime to keel over in the pain felt by the damage to his counterpart. This causes Bombshell to fire the Cerebro shell into Ravage, who is then rendered mindless, and, as such, is unable to control Bombshell. The strip ends with the President explaining that he believed the Autobots were set up and trusted them to deal with the situation. However, he laments that they didn't return to explain and continue to offer peace, and that they've lost his trust because of it. It's a really decent story with a pretty downbeat ending. It's also quite grim that Ravage ends up as a mindless shell, as, without his control of Bombshell, they're both shut down. One noticeable aspect of the strip, as I mentioned earlier, is that the character artwork was based on the actual toys rather than the animated series. I like it though. It's very colourful, and the story is pretty action-packed too. It was everything a young Transformers fan could want in 84-85. Throughout the annual, there are puzzle pages. This page here asks you to match the face to the name. Pause this video and have a go. I'll reveal the answers in 5 seconds. Here's the answer. The next puzzle asks you to find the correct outline of Cliff Jumper. I don't remember him being referred to as the fastest Autobot, but the comics and the TV series had different continuities. The correct answer was Image 5. In this puzzle, you have to match the Decepticons with their alt mode. What strikes me with this is that the character heads of Megatron, Skywarp and Thundercracker bear little resemblance to how we recognise them. Also, since Ravage and Laserbeak are cassette tapes, and Starscream, Thundercracker and Skywarp are jet planes, it's hard to get this absolutely right. So, to that end, here's the correct answer as per the back of the book. The final matching puzzle asks you to connect the Autobots with their vehicle modes. This is a bit easier as, despite the Autobots being vehicles, they are all pretty distinct. Pause the video to have a go yourself, otherwise I'll reveal the answer in 5 seconds. Here's the answer. In addition to matching games, there were 2 puzzles with hidden messages that you had to unscramble. This message relates to a flaw in the Decepticon jet's ability to fly. Have you worked it out yet? Here's the answer. On this page, Autobot Hound challenges you to unscramble his message to reveal one of his special skills. Have you managed to unscramble it yet? Here's the answer. There's also a maze game in which you have to guide Ratchet to repair Mirage, all the while avoiding pitfalls such as Starscream, a river, and a rockfall. We've also got a good old-fashioned word search, in which you have to find the words highlighted. Again, why not pause the video and see how many you can find? And there you go. That's the solution. There's a double-page game for readers to play. I don't think I played it as a kid, and now it looks pretty baffling. You start on the red hexagon and have to make your way to the castle on the right-hand side. I mean, if you throw a 6, you can move 5 right and 1 up, and you've won. Unless I've misunderstood it. I think it might have made more sense if it was a traditional Snakes and Ladders type game. Still, it is what it is. It didn't particularly grab me as a kid, and it still doesn't really do much for me now, even 40 years later. And I like games. There's another comic strip entitled And There Shall Come a Leader, which was set during the Cybertron Wars before the robots crash-landed on Earth. I'll be honest that this didn't grip me as a kid. I wasn't particularly fussed on the sci-fi war story. It takes place in the final days of the Cybertron War. The Autobots are all but vanquished when a council of Autobot politicians hand over total control of armed forces to Optimus Prime. As commander, Prime manages to delay Megatron's attack, but not stop it. However, this was part of a covert plan, and the surface on which they stand is blown up. Prime is rescued by Windcharger at the last minute, but Megatron also survives the explosion and subsequent fall. So this has political elements to the Battle of Cybertron, which meant nothing to me as a kid. Also, aside from Optimus Prime, Megatron, Prowl, Brawn and Windcharger, the characters are generic robot designs. They didn't even give Soundwave his iconic look. So this was one that I always flipped over as a kid. There are 2 text stories, Missing in Action and Hunted. And the first thing that struck me about Missing in Action, even as a kid, is the character scale. Rumble is supposed to be a mini spy cassette, yet here he is towering over Trax, who was established as a standard-sized Autobot. Also, and this causes a ridiculous amount of debate even to this day, the character in the story is named Rumble. Now, in the comics and the toy, Rumble is red, and his twin, Frenzy, is blue. However, this got mixed up when the animated series began, and Rumble, who is a very prominent character, was blue. As the cartoon was what introduced me to the Transformers, I stand by Rumble being blue and Frenzy being red. However, the illustration in the book has the red cassette robot here as Rumble, so that's who's in the story. So anyway, the story is about Trax being beaten and damaged by Rumble. In fact, as per the picture here, Rumble punches through his chest and ripped and tore at his vital microcircuitry. Thinking he's killed the Autobot, Rumble leaves Trax for dead in the alleyway. However, using the last of his power, he transforms into his vehicle mode, a Corvette Stingray. He is unable to contact his compatriots, and his presence is missed. Down the line, he is stolen by a couple of guys up to no good, called Mark and JD, who use him as a getaway vehicle in a series of robberies. We're introduced to a young boy called Danny Phillips, who has an interest in UFOs and space. He spots Trax parked outside a bank and recognises the Autobot symbol from a newspaper article. However, JD and Mark are holding the bank up and keeping the staff hostage. At the same time, the Autobots have located Trax via a series of news reports detailing the getaway vehicle's description. The incidents converge when explosives, brought by JD, accidentally go off during the robbery. Danny, having blundered into the bank only to be held hostage too, is trapped in the burning building. Luckily, Inferno, Grapple and Hoist arrive on the scene. Inferno rescues Danny while Hoist and Grapple assist the others. JD and Mark are arrested and Trax is taken back to Autobot HQ and repaired. It's not a bad story, there were some nice character touches to it. Unfortunately, the ending feels a bit abrupt, But I guess when you're a kid, you don't care about the human aspect of the story, it's all about the giant robots. The last tech story is called Hunted, which is a bit all over the place. It begins with a man named John Butler, an archaeologist, we later find out, being pursued through the South American jungle by Ravage, who eventually catches up with him. Ravage must have got bored or decided he wasn't worth the bother, as, in the next part, the Autobots Prowl and Bumblebee see a news report about him being airlifted to safety. They notice a scrap of metal on the floor of the report, which is identified as being part of Ravage's casing. Bumblebee is chomping at the bit to go and fight the Decepticons in South America. The main Autobots are off elsewhere, leaving Prowl, Bumblebee and a couple of others to guard the base. Bumblebee badgers Prowl to travel over to South America to fight and investigate, but Prowl's having none of it. So, in the next instance, they're in South America, with Autobots Topspin and Twin Twist. They follow the vapor trail residue that all Decepticons leave behind, apparently, when Bumblebee is attacked by a boa constrictor. Despite its best efforts to choke him, the boa constrictor has to forego its delicious meal of metal, cogs and wires after it's shot by Topspin, although he doesn't kill it. The thrills don't stop there, as they're soon attacked by Decepticon Conehead jets, Dirge and Thrust, along with Starscream. However, the Autobots overcome the Seeker jets and follow them to a massive metal structure that the Decepticons have built. Megatron and the other Decepticons decide to abandon the base, but not before telling the Autobots that the rest of the archaeologists are inside, and it's set with bombs to explode. Naturally, the Autobots rescue the humans and save the day. Look, we're not talking Shakespeare here. It's a page-filler story that has giant robots fighting each other and is a promo for characters introduced in the 1985 line. It's not the best story I've ever read, and there's a lot of things that happen just because. Still, it's churlish of me to rag on a 40-year-old story from a children's annual meant to promote toys. I enjoyed the action of it as a kid. The South American jungle setting was interesting, and it was nice to see some other minor characters utilised. Twin Twist and Topspin never even made it into the original animated series. The closer of the annual, naturally, is a black and white image of Megatron, in both robot and gun mode. This is another colour-in image, although this is based on his early Marvel Comics design rather than the toy or the animation. I'm really pleased that I still have this. It's a lovely nostalgia piece which really reminds me of my childhood. I used to stare at the box art images page for ages, dreaming of the toys that accompanied them. I was always surprised that the core Decepticon group were minimised in the book. Aside from a couple of frames in the Insecticon story, there's not much inclusion of Soundwave or Starscream. Megatron also barely appears in that story, although he is fairly prominent in the comic strip about the war on Cybertron. Megatron, Soundwave and Starscream are the three main villains of the animated series, with Soundwave's cassettes and the other jets getting adequate screen time when necessary. However, in this annual, more spotlight is given to Ravage and the Insecticons. On the Autobots side, Optimus Prime features in the Insecticons comic strip, along with Prowl and Warpath, and the War on Cybertron strip. And that's it. He has some passing mentions in the text story, but the spotlight is shone elsewhere. And it seems odd that more wasn't made out of the core characters. I did see online that Hasbro attached notes to include Twin Twist and Topspin to promote their toys, so perhaps similar notes were given to promote specific characters. Optimus Prime and the three main Decepticons were iconic anyway, so maybe it made more sense to focus on secondary characters. None of that spoilt it for me though back in the day. Little me was delighted to have his own Transformers book that he could flip through any time he wanted. And I absolutely loved the concept and characters, and it was a delight to receive this along with the toys. Not much has changed either. This Christmas marks 40 years since I first received the G1 Megatron figure. And if you've watched my G1 Megatron review, which you should have done, and if you haven't, check it out after this, you'll know that he broke on Boxing Day. Well, I discovered in January that the range of Chinese knockoffs has added Megatron to the roster. And that is what I've asked my wife to get me for Christmas. There's a nice circularity to receiving him again on the same day 40 years later. This time he won't break though, because he won't be taken out of the box. He will sit on my shelf as a beautiful display piece, and I can remember him as he was all those years ago. It's only a short video for the moment. My original plan was to cover 4 different annuals, but I've run out of time to make a video that would have been 4 times the length of this one. However, I did want to get a new video up over the Christmas holidays. I realised that my last video was uploaded in February. Unfortunately, there's been a lot happening. I've been working on some promo animations where I can, but I have very little time to myself these days, and I've been battling burnout on and off for this year. But I'm hoping that I'll be able to put some more videos out on a regular basis in 2026. I want to thank some of my wonderful viewers whose enthusiasm for these videos pushes me to carry on making them. Believe me, anybody who watches, enjoys and comments on these videos positively, I appreciate that support more than you can realise. But a very special shout out to Andrew Bryce, Tim Parr, Colin Flanagan, Gaz Turner and Michael Sinnott. I know there's plenty more of you who enjoy what I do, and I thank you immensely. Stay tuned, because next year I'll be covering things like the albums Fire by Electric Six, Scatman's World by Scatman John, the show Brass Eye, the Garbage Pail Kids sticker series, and the G1 Transformers toy Optimus Prime, amongst anything else that tickles my fancy. In the meantime, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Check out some of the other review videos on this channel, or some of my animation work, including some of my award-winning 15-second horror shorts. And if you like what you see on this or any other video, then please do leave a nice comment. All that remains for me to say is Merry Christmas. I truly wish you the very best for the season and a Happy New Year. Stay safe, gang, and I'll catch you in 26.
"40 years later, he's back. Merry Christmas, everybody."
So that was me on Christmas morning 2025, opening the one gift that I'd asked for back in January of 2025. Seriously, whenever I felt down or low or depressed last year, I just thought about opening this on Christmas morning, and that cheered me right up. I've cut the video off just before I started tearing up. You don't need to see that. I first received Megatron back on Christmas Day 1985. So, as I said after opening it, 40 years later, I've got him back again. Now, if you've seen my G1 Megatron review video, you'll know that I have a couple of him already. I have the Japanese Takara 2001 reissue with Japanese text on the box. I also have him in the 2002 commemorative book box collection, and a loose original figure on my shelf. So why was I so excited to receive this one? Well, I don't know if you've noticed, but this review channel basically runs on nostalgia. So when I saw that there was an unofficial reproduction of him exactly as I got him back when I was a kid, it was irresistible. And coupled with the fact that should I have got him on Christmas Day, that would have marked 40 years to the day that I got him originally. Well, that was too much to just pass up. As you may know, when I received him for Christmas as a kid, he broke on Boxing Day. The gun barrel section snapped off, and ultimately I ended up getting alternative gifts in place of a replacement Megatron. It was years later, during a reminiscence about Transformers in secondary school with my friends, that I decided to try and get him again. There was no internet, so it meant scouring car boot sales, markets, etc. And he was impossible to find, and had officially been discontinued back in 1991. So it became a mini obsession of mine to get him again, which I finally did back in 1996 thanks to an American toy dealer that I'd made contact with over the internet. So this one, as I mentioned, is an unofficial release. In fact, it's a Chinese knockoff. the likes of which they've been produced for years. I have several in my collection. Now, some people dislike the concept of these, but they're more the hardcore collectors who are mainly interested in absolute originals. I'm not really that fussed. These are display pieces for me. And this is as near as I'm going to get to getting an original as I can without spending upwards of £300. The box is identical to what I remember, with the classic character artwork against the black and purple background. Photos of the figure in both robot and gun mode on the bottom against the bright purple background. Both sides show the Megatron figure in robot and gun mode, along with the accessories to bulk up the gun. Along the top of the box are the different stages of transformation. And the back has the character biography and that classic 1984 battle scene in space. Although this seems somewhat cropped to me. But that's not a deal breaker though, and it could have looked like this on the original. There's some slight imperfections on the box, a small tear and a minor bend on the top flap. There's also a little step on the front of the box. But these are incredibly minor details though. It's a display piece for my shelf and looks absolutely incredible regardless. So, opening it up on Christmas, my first thought was, it's smaller than I remember. However, I was only very young when I first received him, and I've grown a lot in 40 years, so adjusting for my growth, it seems to still be in proportion as it was originally. Opening it up, it comes in a polystyrene cradle, just like it did back in 1984. There's a gap here for the stickers and the instructions to go. Unfortunately, you can see there's a size discrepancy and it doesn't fit. However, that doesn't matter to me though. What of the gun? Well, here he is in gun mode, and as you can see, he looks totally spot on. In fact, far too spot on. I actually had trouble getting this out of the polystyrene, so I imagine this is going to be the only time he ever leaves that. But too much like a real firearm, which means that, we'll never see a release here or in America again. I mean, the weight is still there. He feels exactly the same as he did back in 1980. I mean, you can't really tell. This still has, it's got the die-cast metal and it's got the same weight as the original. So it just proves that the original 84 toys were far superior to anything else that gets released these days. I imagine the accessories fit on in the same way as they did back in 84, but I had a bit of trouble getting him out of the polystyrene. I'm not even going to try to get those out. I just don't want to break it. So I won't be transforming him, I'm afraid. There's other review videos on YouTube where they do. But honestly speaking, I'm scared, okay? I don't want to jinx anything, okay? It will be absolute sod's law that the first time I transform him, the gun barrel will break off or his leg will fall off or something. And the consensus is basically that the gun mode was much better than his robot mode anyway. But if you're desperate to see what he looked like in robot mode, and you've forgotten what it looked like from the picture that I used in the preceding video, here you go. Here he is, the original G1 Megatron figure in robot mode, with the unfortunate trigger crotch. He wasn't accurate to the Marvel comic or the original animated series, but I loved him just the same. So I've not opened this, but you can see we have the full colour instruction book. We've got the tech spec decoder there, which was a little strip of red plastic. And what you do is put it over this, and it would reveal the hidden stats of the figure that you've just bought. And as you can see, there's the sticker sheet that you can attach to the figure, but I won't be doing this. This will be put at the back of the polystyrene, and it's just nice to know that it's all there. The only thing I'm kind of disappointed that they didn't do is provide us with one of those 1984 catalogues that shows all of the other figures. That would have been really nice to have had. I'm delighted that Megatron finally got his own KO. It immediately brings back all of the feelings of joy, happiness and excitement I had when I was a kid. Just looking at this now rockets me back 40 years to a simpler, happier time. We'll genuinely never see the like of this Megatron again. Toy safety laws, being what they are in the UK and the US, means that you can't sell a realistic looking firearm toy now. They need to be different colours and have an orange plug in the barrel to identify them as toys. I'm annoyed that any current merchandise that features Megatron in his original G1 robot form now has his alt mode as a tank. I understand why, but it annoys me that if you're pitching this niche product, like this anniversary stamp collection that I bought back in 2022, that you're not selling it to kids, you're aiming for the nostalgia market. I was there at the start, and Megatron will always be a Walther P38 pistol to me. By putting the tank mode on a set meant to commemorate the original 1984 line, feels like attempting to rewrite history, and because these characters and toys are so important to me, it really annoys me. By all means, make any contemporary Megatron figure a tank, that's fine, but when you're selling niche products trading on nostalgia, you better make sure it's the original. Anyway, rant and video over. For a more comprehensive look at G1 Megatron, the character, and his various different releases, please do check out my original video. That's it! I hope 2026 brings you the same happiness as I got on Christmas morning when I managed to relive a little piece of my childhood. Have a fantastic new year. I'll be back soon, without the beard, for another video. Until then, I'll catch you later, gang.